Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Astrology News Report, presented by yours truly, Ron Berger. Today is December 8th, 2019. In this segment, we'll take a look at how the planets' patterns in the zodiac have been manifesting in recent world events and the political scene. One of the striking elements during the last couple months of the United States Congress's Impeachment Inquiry has been the speed at which things developed, starting with the whistleblower complaint and the inquiry announcement by Speaker Nancy Pelosi. There's been a new bombshell testimony or fact or report dropping nearly every day during the secret hearings in October, followed by the public hearings in November. Mars is the planet of action and combat. Mercury is the planet of information and reports. These two planets have been in an astrological relationship for the last few months, creating weaponized information. September 24th was the day when Mars joined Mercury in Mercury's sign, Virgo. Virgo is the sign of details and analysis. Even after Mercury separated from Mars by moving into Libra, the relationship between the two planets continued, because by continuing in Mercury's sign Virgo, Mars had Mercury as its dispositor, meaning Mars was transferring its energy to Mercury. And then later in October, while Mercury was in Mars's sign Scorpio, their relationship intensified due to the two planets being in each other's signs. In the second week of November, things really got going with the public hearings phase. By that time, Mercury, now retrograde, had joined up with Mars in the idealistic sign Libra. And note that Uranus, planet of unexpected events, was adding juice to Mars from the other side of the zodiac. In the astrology chart of the USA, the Mars-Mercury combination was transiting in the 11th house, which is the sector of a nation's chart that stands for the elected legislature, in other words, Congress. So, lots of energy, testimony, controversial statements, weaponized facts, and so forth coming from Congress. Supposedly, the fact-finding phase of the impeachment inquiry is over. Now, in December, the process moves to its next phase, the hearings in front of the Judiciary Committee, which got off with a bang on December 4th, the very day that Mercury moved into sidereal Scorpio. Note that Mercury still has a relationship with Mars, because by being in Mars's sign Scorpio, now Mars is Mercury's dispositor. But this time it's different. As of December 4th, we have the planet of facts and information manifesting from the sign of secrets and investigations. A great combination for investigative reporting. This would seem to indicate that the fact-finding phase of this saga is not going to be over, not yet. Indeed, just in the days previous to making this report, more unknown to the public facts have been coming out. Also, Scorpio is a passionate sign and can be vengeful too. Mercury is the planet of speech, and things are already heating up. Mercury will only take 2.5 weeks to transit through Scorpio, but that's enough time for some new developments, new facts. A Christmas present for the country, perhaps. Note, too, that Scorpio is the 12th house of the USA chart. The 12th house of a nation's chart has some rather problematic significations, like conspiracy, sedition, treason. The Democrats in Congress Want to hold the impeachment vote before Christmas? Why the rush? Note that Mars, planet of action and impatience, is still transiting in the USA 11th house, which is the House of Congress. But then, on Christmas Day, December 25th, the same day that Mercury leaves Scorpio, Mars leaves Libra and enters Scorpio. Again, that's the 12th house of the USA chart, and Mars will be there for 6 weeks until early February. This should be interesting. It's the planet of action and force, strong in its own sign, in the sector of the country's chart that stands for criminals, corruption, treason, mob psychology, imprisonment, foreign agents, lots of nasty stuff. So, get your popcorn out. This should be interesting. Last Monday, December 2nd, Trump flew over to London for the NATO summit. That was the very day that Venus, planet of compromise and agreement, was exactly conjunct Ketu, the eclipse point signifying idealism, dissatisfaction, dissolution, chaos. This conjunction is in Sagittarius, the sign noted for personal truth and self-righteousness. Having Venus together with Ketu is a rather squirrely combination because Venus, being the planet of agreement, also represents treaties, and Ketu, as significator of past karma, shows that there's stuff unresolved from the past that needs to be dealt with. Venus is also the planet of value and finance, and it's the NATO finances that Trump has been especially focused on. But with Venus being the planet of appearances and Ketu signifying chaos, well, it's not surprising that things did not go well. As usual, Mr. Trump tried to throw his weight around, grabbing every opportunity to grandstand in front of the world press and making unsettling statements. Note that in Trump's natal astrology chart, Mars, planet of aggression, and Mercury, planet of communication, were still together in his third house of making efforts. But the main news item of the NATO summit turned out to be an unscripted, caught-on-camera moment when 4 prime ministers, Justin Trudeau of Canada, Boris Johnson of Great Britain, Emmanuel Macron of France, and Mark Rutte of the Netherlands, also joined by Princess Anne, were all making fun of Donald Trump. And when he learned about it, Trump abruptly canceled his wrap-up press conference and left the summit early. Although he is well known for making fun of others, being made fun of is something he just can't tolerate. The hashtag Trump is a laughingstock started trending on Twitter. Taking a look at Mr. Trump's chart, we see something interesting. He is in a Jupiter major period, and for a Leo rising chart, Jupiter rules not just the auspicious 5th house, but also the rather problematic 8th house. One of the significations of the 8th house is secret actions, which can lead to scandal and humiliation. Leos have big egos, so it's that humiliation part that he just can't handle. Now, remember this, because later in 2020, that part of his karma will be showing up again. Another interesting item coming up in Trump's chart is the transit of Mars moving into Scorpio. Mars, the planet of action, force, and combat, will start afflicting one of the most intense natal patterns in his chart, his full moon Ketu opposition to Sun-Uranus-Rahu combination. As we move into the new year, Mars gets closer and closer to lining up with this configuration, and by the end of January, that Mars energy will have him bouncing off the ceiling. Stay tuned for this one. The UK is about to hold a once-in-a-lifetime high-stakes election in one of the most charged political climates anyone can recall. British electoral politics is complicated, and almost everything about this vote is unusual and unpredictable. It pits two populists against each other with spending plans unheard of since the 1970s, and it will drag weary voters out to cast their ballots in the dead of winter in what will be the first December election in almost a century in that country. And the winner could finally settle the fate of Brexit more than 3 years after a referendum to leave the European Union plunged the nation into an existential crisis. Mercury is the planet of making choices, therefore voting. Mercury is now in Scorpio, a passionate sign given to secret actions, manipulation, conspiracy, and intrigue. Another key point is that Scorpio is the sign of alliances. That's alliance for the sake of acquiring power. If neither the Conservatives nor the Labour Party gets a majority, an alliance with one of the lesser third parties will have to be made to form a government. And it could be that the Scottish Nationalist Party becomes the kingmaker, with all sorts of consequences, since they want a referendum on Scottish independence. Saturn is the planet of structure, stability, and security. For the past couple months, Saturn has been advancing ever closer towards Pluto, the planet of destruction and rebirth. During December, the two planets are just a couple of degrees apart. Saturn stands for the established order. Pluto stands for large-scale change. Not just in Britain, but in many countries around the world, the threat of large-scale change is growing ever stronger. In Iran, hundreds of people have been killed in the past few weeks in some of the worst political unrest in that country since the Islamic Revolution 40 years ago. There have been numerous instances of Iranian security forces firing on the demonstrators with live ammunition. If the unrest continues, the government, as well as the social fabric of the nation, stands to be ripped apart. Protests in Hong Kong have continued unabated since last June, with the threat of the Chinese army stationed on the outskirts of the city intervening if the police are unable to contain the situation. The French have taken to the streets across that nation to protest the government's proposed overhaul of their national pension system. Last week there was a general strike that all but shut down public transit. French TV showed images of truckers protesting fuel hikes, blocking motorways in several parts of the country. The exact conjunction of Saturn and Pluto will be in the middle of January. Saturn and Pluto will simultaneously be conjunct with Mercury, planet of making decisions, and the Sun, significator of governments and leaders. The potential for dramatic changes in governments will be very strong in January. Okay, that's it for this week's report. Next week, we'll have a look at the Mars in Scorpio transit that starts on Christmas Day, including the effects for each rising sign chart. Okay, until then.